I did all sorts of other models for cycloramas that had all sorts of fairly complex color ideas and compositions and ideas. And then I realized it had to be based on the color circle, that it had to have a total organization for it to work, that it couldn't be broken down into parts and pieces and things like that, without it also being possible to put it back together again in terms of a totality. And so the idea that it was based on the color circle seemed like a natural solution, but it was one that took me inexplicably 8 years to figure out. So I had this model in my studio, finished in 1989, and it was another 10 years before I found someone who was interested in sponsoring the final full-scale project, which was about 30 feet in diameter and 90 feet in circumference, and 8.5 feet high. And that was a museum curator from Germany who I happened to meet, happened to come into my studio and said, let's do it. Magical things happen like that sometimes. It's hard to explain. But I can't tell you how many people turned it down before this fellow actually came to the studio. Here you see a kind of different view of the model. I sort of did a faux floor there, so this is a model in about 6 feet in diameter, so that the idea was that you could stick your head up through that floor and look around, get an idea of what it looked like. But I have to say that I had followed a practice of doing small-scale paintings and mid-sized paintings and large-scale paintings, and I felt pretty good about predicting how things would look at the final scale in my work as I had gone along. But the experience of the cyclorama at full scale was a complete shock and surprise to me. When I finally did see it, the model didn't give me enough of an idea of what it might be like. Because when I painted it on a flat wall in my studio in 4 sections. They were then rolled, shipped to Germany. The stretcher was built in Germany, and I got over there and we started the process of stretching it. And when we finally got it together and I walked up into it, I just was shocked actually by what I saw. There was something about really, I guess it was what I always wanted, but I was still nonetheless shocked because there was something about your body being totally enveloped in color like that and being in a color space that was greatly different than sticking your head into a model. Well, it sounds obvious, but there is something about your ability to be in a space and be surrounded and not see so much all of your feet outside of it or the ceiling outside of it or something like that. And walking around and ambulating in it. These were all really very, very important ideas for me, and I saw this as the right solution to the idea of what I wanted to do, because it really fulfilled all the criteria I had. I wanted something that didn't limit you to a Victorian cupola, that didn't restrict you. I wanted something that appealed to an active viewer who was going to search and find different cognitive kinds of experiences for themselves as they played with their vision and their bodies in the context of a space like that. And the form and the color and the scale finally achieved that for me. And I think that leads to sort of the more philosophical notion of what I was trying to do, because I really wanted the viewer to be free to do and to discover whatever they might, so that there might be things that you've discovered or you've experienced in the context of this cyclorama or that I haven't. And in fact, I'm always finding new things myself as I play with my vision. I sometimes find that people who come to it new are more aggressively searching for different kinds of experiences than I do, because you get lazy after a while when you start thinking you know it, but you don't. And you have to constantly reawaken in yourself. This is a view of the first installation of the Cyclorama 2000 in Den Haag, and the installation was not in 1998, as was said earlier, it was in 2000. And then it was shown in a number of places in Europe. Here's a view of the surface, which is familiar to you because it's the grid pattern is similar to the grid pattern that you see. I wanted also to emphasize the point that I didn't get. I wanted every detail down to the smallest detail to show the kind of transparency and luminosity of the color as it does when you're further away. And so it was important to me that the smaller detail, the smaller structure would work well. It would work to affect different kinds of experiences for you, as well as the more distant point. When things become smaller and you start to take in larger scale things. One of the things that was also important to me was this idea of apparent luminosity. So it wasn't only about apparent transparency, it was also apparent luminosity. I remember Sam coming into my studio the first time and saying, where's the light coming from? And it's that kind of experience that you get from both those grade paintings that are on the end wall and within the cyclorama that are important. Because I'm going on too long, but I do want to take you up to DE cyclorama. So I finished that in 2000, and by 2004, I started thinking about new ideas to do another cyclorama, and I started thinking back to my early experiences in Rome. Maybe some of you recognize the Campidoglio, Michelangelo's pattern for the plaza of the Campidoglio in Rome, where he plays around with this oval and puts this pattern in it to make you unaware of the fact that it's oval instead of a circle by putting this very symmetrical pattern in it. And of course, I was a big fan of Borromini's work. You saw the Perspectiva that I showed you earlier, and San Carlo Quattrofontana, which plays around with ovals laying upon ovals and overlapping ovals, and of course Bernini's San Andrea, which is only across the street from San Carlo Quattrofontana, which also plays around with your perception of the oval space, because as you walk in, the apse which you think of as further away is actually in the short axis of the ellipse, and it opens up into a wider axis left and right. And I started thinking about how I could play around with the relationship between the ellipse and the circle. And when I saw these paintings, which are in the show, perhaps you noticed that they don't look rectilinear, that they look warped, and that they look like they're bulging in the middle. And I discovered that the principle involved there seemed to be the relationship of the color to the border. I had seen Seurat's show in 1991, the Seurat show at the Met, which was a fabulous show, and I saw the borders on all those paintings. Seurat came to the border idea fairly late in his career. He actually painted the border of Grand Jatte after he painted Grand Jatte. He went back and painted the border, and went back and painted some of the borders of some of his paintings later. But he really got into the idea of how the border works. I had done shape paintings in the 60s, as you saw, and the idea of the shape painting makes the wall the ground. And so it becomes figure of the painting, ground of the wall. And then after a while, I realized, well, I could become content with the convention of the rectangle. The reason that we have this convention of a rectangle is to not have to play back to the wall. But I was always aware of the relationship, especially the color relationship with the wall. And the framing idea of Seurat seemed to be another way to play with this and another aspect of it. And so I got involved with various ideas about painting frames